After Kata Akuna's betrayal and the battle that followed, silence hung thick over Tanalorr like the dust of fallen temples. Cal Kestis stood alone at the summit of the plateau, where ancient Jedi once meditated beneath open skies. Now the winds whispered only questions about the Order, about Merrin, about Kata, and about whether anything he tried to rebuild would stand longer than what had already fallen. He told Merrin one evening that he wasn't sure how to begin. She had watched him carefully then, the glow of a campfire catching the green in her eyes. "You start by listening," she said. "Not to the Force, to them." So he did. The early years were slow, while Greez rebuilt the mantis with endless groans about sand in the filters and rust on his soul. Cal walked the forgotten halls of the Tanalorr temple, uncovering fragments left by those who had once taught peace in a galaxy that no longer remembered it. Merrin traveled often to lost planets, old resistance contacts, outposts where rumors stirred. But it was Cal who started the map. He had taken the ancient Wayfinder stone from the ruins, and instead of using it to locate lost Jedi, he rewired it, felt it, to resonate not with names but with disturbances. Not violent ones, not dark ones, quiet, flickering, confused ripples in the Force. The kind young people left behind when their abilities sparked and scared them. The kind no Inquisitor would notice, but that Cal could feel, like a faint breath in the dark. He told Kata it was like listening for sadness. She said that sounded hard. He smiled then, and replied that being a Jedi usually was. Over 5 years, Cal and Merrin, sometimes together, often apart, found nearly a dozen such echoes. The Wayfinder would lead him to remote farms where a child cried during a thunderstorm and the sky shattered above him, to a drifting freighter where a woman could hear the pain of wounded animals in her sleep, to abandoned stations haunted not by ghosts but by fear. He never called them Jedi. He never asked them to follow. He offered shelter, knowledge, and the truth that the galaxy was still dangerous, and no one was coming to save it but themselves. Trust was the hardest part. One boy nearly killed him out of panic. Another ran away after one day, convinced it was a trap. Thena, the first adult to stay, didn't speak to Cal for 2 weeks after she arrived, and she still wouldn't sleep indoors. But they stayed. Slowly. Carefully. And the temple filled again with voices. Kata grew up in that space between grief and discovery. At 12, she sparred with Thena and beat her in reach. At 13, she meditated with Merrin and opened a sealed Jedi archive no one else could touch. At 15, she looked Cal in the eye and told him she wanted to build her own lightsaber. He tried to protest, worried she wasn't ready. Merrin shook her head behind her gently. "Trust her," she said, "or this ends with you." In private, Cal admitted he was scared, not of Kata, but of what he might become to her. Sari had been like a mother to him, Cordova like a grandfather. Bode had been a father, twisted by fear. He didn't want to be a master. He didn't want to raise Kata in shadow. Merrin told him one night, as the moons of Tanalorr bled red over the sea, that raising someone wasn't about control, it was about presence. He asked her how she knew. She answered that he'd done it for years already. Merrin never pressed him for more than he could give, but he gave her everything anyway, slowly. A shared room, a woven band of her Dathomir cloth around his wrist, long nights where they spoke not of war, but of food, of stars, of the future neither of them believed in, but kept building anyway. She called him stubborn. He called her terrifying. They both meant it as compliments. By the 6th year, Tanalorr was no longer empty. The temple buzzed with motion. Students training, meditating, arguing. Greez ran a kitchen that doubled as a rumor mill. Merrin had started mapping the ley lines of the Force around the planet. Kata had grown into a leader in training, her movements sharp, her mind sharper. She was kind but not soft. She carried her father's memory like a scar, not visible but present. And Cal? Cal still walked the paths at night, still listened, but something in him had changed. Once, he had watched every newcomer like a threat, flinched at small lies, questioned every motive. But time, Merrin, and Kata wore those edges down like water on stone. He stopped expecting betrayal, started expecting mistakes. And when those mistakes came, he faced them not with rage, but with instruction. The turning point came when a new arrival, a teenager named Nado, challenged Cal openly in front of the others, accusing him of keeping too much to himself. He said Cal was trying to rebuild something without letting anyone else in. Cal didn't speak for a long time. Then he said Nado was right, and then he stepped back and let Kata finish the day's lesson. That was the moment the Order truly began. It wasn't an army, it wasn't the Republic, it wasn't the Jedi of the old war, but it was something new, something shared. Years later, after Cal had carved the new code into the temple walls, not the old one, not rigid lines about emotion and fear, but something alive, he would sit beside Kata as she prepared to travel to the Outer Rim, her first mission leading others. He asked if she was ready. She told him that he had taught her everything he could. He asked what she feared most. She said, losing what they had built. He told her they hadn't built something that could be lost. They had built something people could carry. Merrin joined them, arm brushing his. She said softly that maybe that was what hope really meant. The mantis lifted off again at dawn. Cal watched it vanish into the clouds, his hand resting against the hilt of his saber. Tanalorr was quiet again, for now. But beneath its silence, the Force pulsed with voices, not echoes of the past, but songs of something just beginning. And Cal Kestis, Jedi no longer alone, finally closed his eyes and smiled. Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the Liaran Narrative Gaming channel to discover the rest of the story. See ya.